With Roe v. Wade gone, should abortions be banned? Welcome to Mark and Pete Live. Here is the thought for this episode.
Life in question. Should an unborn life be determined in court? Can a battle of wills win a type of legal support? Could a government simply offer far more support? Is a woman's womb where best justice is fought? Clergyman Pete, I ask you about the Supreme Court ruling which removes American women's constitutional right to abortion. What say you?
Yes, the United States Supreme Court, of course, makes decisions on whether particular laws that are passed fit in with the Constitution. And in the past, in the 1970s, there was a case of Roe versus Wade in which there was a decision made that in the Constitution there was the right to an abortion. Now, this particular decision has simply reversed that.
Yes.
So it hasn't taken away any rights as such. It's taken away the claim that it's in the Constitution. So in that way, I suppose it's taken away the constitutional right, but it's claiming that it was never there in the first place. What this has done is taken this legal decision and removed its legitimacy in controlling what women do in terms of having an abortion. So despite lots of claims to the contrary that I've heard, this doesn't disempower women. Rather the opposite. It empowers them to either be voted into office or to vote for particular people who will pass a law which approaches abortion in the way that they want. In other words, it's taken away the ability of the court, a group of judges, to just decide whether or not you're allowed to have an abortion, and given that decision-making power back to the people and their elected representatives. So now, instead of the federal Supreme Court making the decision, individual states legislatures or indeed the Congress of the United States could pass a law either making the abortions allowed or making sure that everyone has to be given the right to an abortion, or the opposite, banning them. It could make a decision, but it's down to the legislator. So that merely puts the question a step further along the way. But I think it puts it in the hands of the right people. You see, the judges aren't elected. The justices in the Supreme Court aren't elected. It's giving it to elected officials. I suppose the question is, what should that law be that these legislators can now make?
Well, I think, Clergyman Pete, this is an important point, because what we've seen is that there are several states within the United States that are now seeing a so-called triggering law,
yes,
which is that they will see abortions banned over the next month. Now, yes. What we need to also highlight is that President Joe Biden has described the ruling as a tragic error. Now, that's his view. But here's the bigger question, which is there are lots of clinics that are closing because they can no longer practice the law in certain states. So the real ultimate question should be, when you look at the whole of the United States, what should the law be? How should the law be configured to make it fair? And I think what we should also highlight as we sort of expand upon this, there are different circumstances in which women find themselves when this ruling or various rulings will take place. We can explore that. But what's your view on the way that the law should be structured?
The way that it should be structured? Well, I do think that the United States is in an odd position in which you have each state having the ability to have a different law.
Exactly.
It would be clearer if there were one law for the entire country. Now, it is possible for the United States Congress to pass such a law. You see, what's been taken away is the claim that it's in the Constitution. But there also isn't a claim in the Constitution that abortion is wrong either. Neither has been stated by the Supreme Court in this decision. So as far as I understand it, Congress could decide. So you could have a law, or in fact, you could try and encourage all states to pass the same law. How should it be structured? Well, the way I look at it is this: abortion is quite clearly the ending of a life of a baby within the womb, a fetus within the womb. A fetus just being the Latin for baby, so I suppose a bit redundant. But and so that being the case, I think there are only a few justifications for killing someone in the same sort of ideas that you would have for whatever justifying killing an adult. The same. This is how I think it should be structured. The same decision-making process should be followed with an unborn human being.
Well, now that's one view. I have a slightly different view on a certain set of circumstances. Now, let me give you an example. I'm going to set the context here. So this ironically comes from a female point of view, which is actually an abortion clinic in Little Rock, Arkansas, a state with a so-called trigger law allowing an instant ban. So the doors to the patients are shut, and in the court's opinion was then posted online. The staff made calls to tell women that all appointments were cancelled. One of the nurses has stated, her name is Ashley Hunt, said, no matter how hard we prepare for bad news, when it finally hits, it hits hard. Having to call these patients and tell them that the Roe versus Wade was overturned is heartbreaking. That's from her viewpoint. Okay, so maybe is that right? There are situations where I can see that many people think, hold on, that's lots of clinics closing, talent disappearing. You need medical professions to serve the community. But here's the thing. If abortion is wrong, if you took that view, there are situations, as we all know, where a rape kicks in. And if that happens and a woman, a victim, gets pregnant, and let's say the circumstances is that such that individual will also lose her life because for medical reasons. And ironically, there have been some women who have come out into the media and highlighted if they had not had an abortion, they would not be alive today because they were victims of a rape situation and the termination had to happen. I want to ask you that question. Should the law accommodate that situation, or is it one rule for one rule for another under the eyes of God?
Okay, so now looking at the law that's going to be passed by human beings. Well, I think we're agreed here, Markaby. We think, well, the human laws should accord with God's law. But what is that? How does that apply in this particular stage? How does do not murder apply in this state? How can we judge that? Well, there is biblical precedent. There is a case law in the Bible, one of what happens when you kill a pregnant woman. It's regarded as having killed two people, or if you kill the baby, then it's classed as murder, even though the woman hasn't died. So it is clear from the case law in the Bible that a baby within the womb is seen as being alive at some point. Now, as to whether you judge when it starts living, well, now we're far better at doing that because of advances in medical science. We can tell whether a baby is alive from very, very early, from conception, pretty much. And at that point, it's a human life, I would argue. It's certainly no one's arguing it's an antelope or an alien. So I think we have to say it's human life. Now, if you don't know it's a human life, you don't know not know if it's human, don't know if it's alive yet. At what point should you stop abortion? Should you not have abortion? Well, then still you should have abortion back to conception because you don't know. You don't take a risk. It might be alive or not. Therefore, we'll just rip it apart, which is, the basic one of the main procedures in abortion. So, I would say that abortion then is wrong because it's effectively murder.
Yes.
Therefore, if the reason for me going through that step by step is this comes to the point: what do you do about if someone's been raped? Well, yes. Rape is an evil. It is wrong. And should be punished absolutely severely. But the wrong person to punish is an innocent baby. The baby is definitely not at fault. If there's a rape, the woman who's been raped, well, she's not at fault either. But that doesn't mean you should kill the baby. So in that case, what I would say is this. We need to be better. I'm talking about us in the United Kingdom. In parts of America, this is really well sorted out. But we need to be better at offering adoption in that situation. Must be taken to term because you shouldn't kill the baby. But in that case, maybe it'd be so traumatic bringing up the baby because of the rape that caused it. Therefore, you should have adoption. But now the final point you raised: what if either because of this rape, or maybe it's a different situation for different health reasons, health problems,
the woman cannot have the child? Yeah,
the woman can't have the child because it's going to kill the woman. Well, you see, I still say abortion is wrong, and this isn't a sort of a working round it. It's just that I don't call that abortion, because abortion is when you're trying to kill the baby. You're completely aborting it. You're bringing the baby out early, but the intention is not to kill it. It may end up that it's dying through the procedure, but the intention is trying to save both lives. Of course, the baby being more vulnerable, it may well have to die, but that's not the intention. Therefore, it's not abortion. And that means in terms of the decision making, it's only done in order to save the woman's life. And in that case, you're still trying to do the procedure so it's the best possible outcome for the survival of the baby as well. So that's my opinion. All abortion is wrong. If you terminate in order to save the woman's life, then because the woman's life is so at risk, then in fact what you're doing is not abortion. Now, one of my children was born only 5 weeks early, which is just on the limit of where it could become a problem. Now, the reason he was born by cesarean section and cut out was because he was being held in place by the umbilical cord being wrapped around his neck. So he was removed in that way in order to save the mother, my wife's, life. That's why he was delivered in that way. But he also survived. That's perhaps an easier situation to do, because most likely he would survive, even though it was early.
Yeah.
In that sort of situation, even when it's more risky, yes, you should do it. You should try at all times to save life.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Clergyman Pete, there's a lot of debate, and I know that this is going to continue. Many people are still concerned as to what certain states will actually decide, and also the protests will continue whichever side you are on. Clergyman Pete, I certainly think that this is very much a good point to open up the conversation to our listeners. Yeah. What do they think?
Yes, what do you think? Leave a comment. You can go to markandpete.com, and there's a place on this very episode to leave comments, and we really appreciate your input. As you will have heard from our tone in this episode, we treat this very seriously. We know it's a very difficult issue, and it may be that you can change our minds if you've got a good argument. We're not closed-minded on this issue. We realise that it's about difficult decisions that are being made. So let us know. And until next time, from Mark and Pete, God bless.